Welcome to our conversation. Today we're diving deep into this intriguing interplay between neoliberalism, patronage, and kleptocracy in Cambodia.
I'm really looking forward to this discussion. It's a mix of historical context and present-day politics, right?
Exactly. What's fascinating here is how neoliberal policies, originally designed under global economic pressures, have been shaped by Cambodia's tumultuous history. Wars, genocide, even U.S. bombings, and then re-articulated through a very local lens.
Definitely. So, to get this straight, we're looking at neoliberalism not as this monolithic one-size-fits-all reform, but as something that morphs, almost like a chameleon, as it interacts with local practices such as patronage?
Right. It's like, imagine neoliberalism as this global idea that when it travels into places like Cambodia, it picks up local flavors and becomes what some refer to as neoliberalism. It's a hybrid system where state power, corruption, and market-driven reforms all collide.
That's so interesting. It challenges the common notion that neoliberal reforms uniformly lead to more efficient, transparent governments.
Exactly. In Cambodia, neoliberalism intertwines with an existing patronage system that extends from the top levels of government down to local village officials.
Yeah, I see that.
It's not like the global dream of small government. Here, you have a system that, paradoxically, strengthens elite power through secret networks and, well, blatant favoritism.
And isn't it also about privatization? There's this idea that transferring public resources to the private sector could improve efficiency, but in Cambodia, it seems to function primarily as a channel for the elites to enrich themselves.
Absolutely. Privatization in this context often turns into asset stripping. Public lands and resources, which should ideally be a common good, end up being manipulated through underhanded deals and land swaps. These deals are almost always indirect ways for well-connected power brokers to personally profit.
Right. And we see real examples of that, like with companies such as CEROC, which isn't just a business conglomerate, it's like a state apparatus in disguise.
Exactly. CEROC is practically emblematic of this whole mechanism. They got started right when Cambodia was transitioning to a free market system, and then ended up monopolizing huge sectors like petroleum, benefiting from preferential contracts and secretive deals.
Yeah, that really underscores what institutional corruption looks like. But I wonder, isn't it a bit too simplistic to blame all these issues solely on external neoliberal pressures?
Good point. While international institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and Western donors designed policies aimed at market liberalization, the real story in Cambodia is how the local elite, under the guise of neoliberal reform, co-opt these policies. They manipulate state institutions, particularly the judiciary and regulatory frameworks, to safeguard their own power and wealth.
It's interesting how the discourse channels this external enemy image, too. The government, through a controlled media, labels the international financial institutions as, adversaries to national interests, almost mirroring past narratives from darker times in Cambodia's history.
Right. That's a crucial element. The government positions itself as populist, using local language media to criticize these global forces, but at the same time, the same local elite uses neoliberal reforms as a facade to continue patronage and kleptocratic practices.
It's a layered kind of storytelling, and this has deep historical roots, doesn't it? I mean, Cambodia's past, U.S. bombings, genocide, decades of war, sets up a unique context in which neoliberalism is not just a set of economic policies, but a mechanism that merges with local political violence.
Precisely. The trauma of war and genocide created an environment where state functions became entangled with survival. And now, neoliberal reforms serve as both a continuation of oppressive practices and an opportunity for elites to tighten their grip.
right? Very much like a feedback loop. And then there's the aspect of legal reforms. The donors push for a rule of law model that in theory should curb corruption. But in reality, how does that play out in Cambodia?
That's one of the ironies here. The legal reforms tend to reinforce existing patronage networks rather than dismantle them. The judiciary is infiltrated by those same networks, so legal instruments of transparency and accountability become tools to favor entrenched interests rather than protect citizens' rights.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. It almost seems like they're using law as a shield for the elite rather than for the public.
Exactly. It's like, they implement laws to create an illusion of reform. But these are carefully designed to secure the economic rewards for those in power, while the common people end up being, criminalized or left vulnerable.
It's a perverse cycle. And these vulnerabilities are really evident on a daily basis. I mean, you have evictions, violent land grabs, and even domestic issues like rising domestic violence rates, all symptoms of this broader systemic problem.
Absolutely. When you look at areas like Phnom Penh and Siem Reap, the growth of urban spaces is often underpinned by these aggressive neoliberal practices. There's violent eviction of families in the name of development or beautification, and the state justifies these actions by blaming inefficiencies in local organization.
You're right, the human cost is substantial. And when we talk about land, the sheer scale is staggering. Private investors controlling a major chunk of Cambodia's total land area. That's not just a statistic, it's a measure of power consolidated in a few hands.
It's like, a massive game of musical chairs where the seats are land rights. And if you lose your seat, you're left with nothing but a trace of what was once home. The process of land accumulation through patronage and privatization leaves communities powerless and disenfranchised.
Definitely unsettling. It's almost as if the neoliberal agenda has been hijacked completely by interest groups that benefit from instability rather than from genuine development.
Exactly, it's a hijacking. And here's something that really stands out: the rhetoric used by the government. They often invoke historical narratives of national struggle and liberation while facilitating modern-day practices that are equally, if not more, oppressive.
Yeah, that's a stark contrast. So by casting international influences as enemies and wrapping themselves in populist language, the government diverts attention from the internal dynamics of corruption and violence, right?
Exactly. It's a strategic deflection. By playing the victim against external forces, they mask the brutal realities of their own policies, like how they use privatization and clandestine legal arrangements to maintain their grip on power.
It's like a magic trick you can't quite look away from. But, some might argue that this hybrid form of neoliberalism might eventually lead to greater stability or even modernity. Is there any room for that optimistic interpretation?
I get where you're coming from, but I think it's important to challenge that notion. The evidence from Cambodia shows that this system doesn't bring stability for the masses. It just deepens inequality and perpetuates violence. The potential stability is only for the elites, not for the everyday people.
Yeah, I see that. It's a sort of selective stability. And wouldn't you say that it also indigenous local power structures into the global economic narrative? Like local actors are not just puppets of globalization, but also active reinterpreters of these ideas?
Absolutely. Neoliberalism in Cambodia isn't just imposition from without. It's also reconfigured by local historical trajectories, cultural practices, and, by the established ways of doing politics. The term neoliberalization, in this case, is more than just economic reform. It's an ongoing process where global doctrines and local practices blend into something entirely unique. What some term neoliberalism.
That phrase really captures it. I find it compelling how these ideas, when contextualized, reveal that the rigid theories of neoliberal reform might be too simplistic to capture what actually happens on the ground.
Right. Because, in a place like Cambodia, standard economic and legal prescriptions get bent and twisted. Instead of universal legal norms, you have pseudo-legal frameworks that protect patronage networks while piling on violence against dissenters and the vulnerable.
Yes, that really disrupts the conventional wisdom about market reforms, doesn't it? And let's not forget the role of international donors. They often have double standards, pushing for rule of law reforms that, in practice, end up cementing these power imbalances rather than challenging them.
Exactly. Donor communities advocate for transparency and legal reform, but by focusing solely on property and contractual law, they inadvertently legitimize a system that marginalizes people and fuels accumulating inequality.
It's a vicious cycle. So ultimately, what we see here is a complex web. External influences, internal historical trajectories, patronage, state violence, all interconnected in ways that make Cambodian neoliberalism a unique yet cautionary tale.
Precisely. It's a rich, albeit dark, tapestry that shows us how global capitalism's mechanisms can be reshaped by local political legacies. The interplay of neoliberal reform, corrupt legal systems, violent dispossession, and elite enrichment in Cambodia really challenges the one-dimensional image of neoliberalism.
Yes, exactly. I guess what we're left with is a narrative that warns us against simplistic interpretations of global economic theories. Instead, it urges us to look at how localized, historical, and institutional factors transform these theories into systems that can perpetuate inequality and violence.
Right. And it really pushes us to think, to question whether the promises of neoliberal policies ever truly benefit the people at large, or if they primarily serve as mechanisms for the elite to secure more power.
And that's a tough but necessary question. One last thought. I sometimes wonder if there's a pathway for reform that cuts through this mesh of patronage. Do you think that a genuine transition is possible that could, dismantle these entrenched systems built on kleptocracy and violence?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? On one hand, there's exactly, deep-seated historical legacies and established patronage networks. On the other, there's an ever-growing awareness among citizens and some elements within the NGO community fighting injustice. But the challenge is monumental because any such change threatens the current elite's grip on power. It may require radical rethinking of both legal and political structures, a true break from the past.
It really does sound like breaking an almost unbreakable chain. It's almost an existential struggle for the nation's future, balancing development, social justice, and accountability against the powerful forces that have defined its political economy for decades.
Exactly. And it's a reminder how, in our globalized world, we can't just apply cookie-cutter solutions. Every context has its nuances. And Cambodia's case, its neoliberalism with Cambodian characteristics, is a sobering example of that.
Indeed. Well, this has been such a thought-provoking exchange. It really underscores the importance of considering both the global and the local when examining economic policies.
Absolutely. It's this dynamic, messy interplay that offers both challenges and insights for scholars and policymakers alike. As we move forward, understanding these complexities is vital if we're ever to address the very real human costs of such economic frameworks.
Yes, exactly. Thanks for unpacking these layers with me. It's been a deep dive into a subject that reshapes how we think about neoliberalism and its real-world consequences.
My pleasure. Conversations like this remind us that behind every policy or economic reform lie stories of human struggle, resilience, and, unfortunately, often profound injustice. Lessons that we must not ignore.
Absolutely. And perhaps, by understanding these intricacies, we can foster a broader solidarity that challenges these entrenched systems globally. I mean, the stakes are huge when it comes to inequality and violence.
Yes, indeed. It's a call to, look beyond surface narratives and engage critically with the complex mix of global ideologies and local realities. That's what makes this subject so essential to our time.
Right, exactly. Thanks for this conversation. It certainly leaves me with a lot to think about regarding the role of power, history, and economics in shaping societies.
And thank you for pushing these challenging questions. It's discussions like this that help peel back the layers of what's really happening beneath the surface of global and local politics.
A final note, while the Cambodian situation is uniquely complex, similar patterns seem to emerge in other post-colonial contexts. It really speaks to the need for comparative research that can illuminate these interconnected issues further.
Absolutely. The implications extend far beyond Cambodia, offering a lens through which we can examine the broader structures of global capitalism and its violent manifestations.
No doubt about that. With that, we wrap up our session today. Thanks for the rich and engaging dive into the subject. It's been both eye-opening and, deeply thought-provoking.
Thank you. And let's keep questioning, debating, and exploring these critical issues as they evolve. Until next time.